I was listening to 98.1 recently, and you know, the announcers were making the point that Christians are usually very miserable people because we're tired. We go to church Sunday, Mondays might be men's conference, Wednesday some other meeting, Friday night prayer, Saturday practice, Sunday church. And so by the time we go out, when we go to work, we're tired, we're miserable, we're scratchy, you know, and so we really can't do that which we're really supposed to do. Well, are we spending too much time in church?
I don't know if I agree with that. You know, I am sure that there are some people that may be like that. Now, I don't know whether or not that represents the larger percentage of church people or not, right? But I'm sure there are people that are like that. But again, the thing is that what can contribute to that is the amount of time that we spend indoors, not just physically, but mentally too.
Okay.
You understand? And sometimes spiritually. Because a lot of our spiritual activity, more spiritual activity is done in church than anywhere else.
That's right.
There is a redundance of spiritual play in church than anywhere else. And what we are actually doing, because we are the light of the world, but we are actually operating as the light of the church. So really we just shining light in each other's face.
All right.
You understand? And I say this at the risk of sounding miserably redundant. I say it again. When you are, for drivers, you know, when you're driving down in the night and a man has on a high beam and that thing is in your face, that thing just be so disturbing.
That's right.
I mean, some of these most spiritual people does go in the flesh. You understand? People say all kind of things in their mind, that kind of stuff. And because that is a miserable experience. That is one of the reasons why you have so much bickering in church, because people shining the light in each other's face. It is about gifts and competition and that kind of thing in our church space.
Right.
But outside in the world, you ain't have no competition in that space. You understand? So there's more activity. So there's supposed to be, the church is the place that you come in, you get sharpened, you get encouraged, you get your battery recharged or whatever you need to do.
And you go out
back
again.
into the environment to shine the light. The principles that you have been taught on a Sunday or Tuesday night or wherever are supposed to impact the place that you spend most of your time. Whether that be in the school or the job or whatever, that is where it is supposed to impact them. In terms of governance and all those kinds of things, you are supposed to impact your space, and you never know. There are sometimes people just observing you, they don't tell you anything, but you do not know what kind of impact that you just being you as a Christian, living this life in that space, how that impacts people.
I want us to touch a little bit on family and the church and put all of that into perspective, because I'm going to realize more and more now that, you know, there's some people who are very active, but then you still see them struggling in terms of managing the family, managing the home. I mean, how should one operate in terms of between church, between home, managing children, wife or husband?
That's always a tough gig. That's always tough. And for those of us who have not been taught about it properly, it is harder. Now, my own experience, you see, we were taught about Matthew 6:33, seek the kingdom first. Now, that kingdom seeking did not include family as a priority. You understand? The priority was always the house of God, the work of God. That's how I understood it. I don't know that I was the best interpreter then, but that's how I understood it. And strange enough, because of the formative time that I was exposed to that information, that shaped my value system as a Christian. So you put everything into the church. You understand? I've come and we start a ministry, and all your resource, all your money, you put that into the church. And you oftentimes leave your family undone. You understand? You spend a considerable amount of time preaching here, there, and everywhere, you see, and you leave your family unattended. And over time, that comes back and bites you in the place that you don't want it. You understand? I think in more recent times, though, there has been a lot of information and encouragement to change that paradigm. And I think that has been very helpful. In my own case, I think I have been very, very fortunate, and I have no problems at all saying this without contradiction, that God has put a woman in my life that has tremendous ministry understanding, ministry sensitivity, you understand? I mean, that the things that I do, I am not inhibited, you know, as perhaps somebody else would have been. But if I had this to do all over again, there are some things that I would do differently as it relates to family life,
Right.
you know. But I am also encouraged that there is a lot more discussion taking place, so that even people coming after me, my generation, in the formative years of Christianity and leadership, that they are getting a different kind of perspective. So really and truly, really and truly, those ministers that are coming after me ought to have better family lives. They should, because the information is different.
Right.
Whether or not they're applying it is another matter. The numbers still ridiculous.
Yeah.
But I'm saying there is not as much wanting for information and encouragement as maybe, you know, like for those of us who were shaped like in the 80s and so on. So that is a good thing, that the discussion is taking place. It really has a lot to do too with a man's willingness sometimes to change the bad habits that you have. You know, sometimes you can get so addicted to church work, man. You can get so hooked on trying to bind every devil and cast out every spirit and lay hands on every head and, you know, be in every meeting and counsel everybody and that kind of thing. And sometimes that can really, you won't live long if you keep doing that. I'm telling you. But you know, it can hurt the relationships, people that you love the most. There are a significant amount of pastors that have lost families, marriages, and children have gone astray because of that. And it's unfortunate. I don't think that they set out to do that, but just that because they were not sensitive to those things, and the devil was at play. Because remember, he knows that everybody is creatures of will.
Right.
Not because your father is a pastor, that means you automatically go into heaven, or automatically you're going to have a happy life or be.
As a matter of fact, you're under more pressure
exactly.
if your father or
Exactly.
your husband is a pastor.
Yeah, pastors' kids are not angels. They have some of the same problems.
But I also want us to come down a level lower than that. I want us to deal with the average members of congregations, people who are very active. Let me just use a regular example. Most churches, the women are the ones very active.
That's true.
The husbands probably don't even come to church.
Yeah.
The husband's home at the bar drinking, partying. He probably knows when you have an all night. He probably knows when you have you have a fast or whatever the case may be. And he knows your schedule better than you. And women and even men, you know, struggle because, you know, the partner sees that I'm competing with church.
Yeah.
And even, you know, as it's coming to me now, it's not just for people whose husbands or wives are not saved, but even for people who might be going to church together, but one partner might be more active than the other. And there's a feeling that I'm getting some type of competition. Church is taking over my family, my husband, my wife, you know.
And I think the onus is that falls a lot on leaders in this case. To teach a real balanced message as it relates to ministry and family life, because ministry really should include family life. You know, so the onus is it is upon leaders. I think some ministries run too much of a tight schedule, you know, especially in the light of the fact that there are so much other added pressures on relationships.
Right.
You know, sometimes you have to make an adjustment based on the situation.
That's right.
Right? So while if we did not have all these added distractions and all these other things that naturally impacts on relationships, trying to damage them and break them up, we could have run a military house and be in church 7 days a week.
Right.
You understand? But the fact that we have these additional problems means that we have to set aside more quality time to try and insulate our relationships from some of these things. So you have to, as a leader, you have to structure your services in such a way and teach your people, which is critical. The people must understand that you have this time available and allotted to you to make sure that you do quality work in your family life so that you could try and avoid some of these things. But there are some ministries, they run a tight house, man.
And makes it difficult.
Yeah.
In fact, sometimes I say without, I mean, a little fear of being sounding contradictory, but sometimes I wonder if instead of helping families, if some churches are actually destroying families because you're creating that distance, that rift.
I'm telling you, some of the routines can contribute to the breakup. Some of the routines, and you see, it is critical because sheep bring forth after their own kind. You understand? So if you teach that militancy and prioritize being in church in the actual walls and doing the actual church thing as against your family, and you don't really teach that with a balance, the people that you're teaching it to will believe it.
Right.
So a lot of times why they continue doing that, they say, but this is my understanding, and they believe that, and they will also be convicted by that, although it may not necessarily be the right thing. The human conscience is a kind of funny thing. The conscience is a slate. You come with it and it's a blank slate, and then you put information on it, and that information convicts you. Unfortunately, that information could be good or bad.
That's right.
You understand what I'm saying? Right? For instance, there are some convictions that we would have had as children growing up. You never know why you have that conviction. And then when they get older, you realize, but this really
it didn't make no sense. Right?
But then, back then, it was a major, major issue. So, when it is taught in church that this is how we run things, and people believe that, they would always be treating like home and other people who do not believe like that at all. They're really not understanding what God requires. And they will continue down that road saying this is the will of God and not budget from here, at the risk or at the expense of a relationship, a family.